Big Dunks, the real and true and factual story of the legitimate basketball league by TV's Kevin Lanigan. Chapter 0, the pregame show. When I was 8 years old, my father took me to my first legitimate basketball league game. I remember it amongst my most treasured memories. When my brain is full and I need to remove something to make room for new information, I would sooner remove my college graduation, the birth of my first child, or the time I met the Obamas on a cross-country Greyhound bus than cast off a second of my first LBL experience. Footnote: the Obamas denied fervently that they were, in fact, the once first family of the United States, but I know from Obamas. And those were some classic Obamas. And what better place for some Obamas to blend in than on a Greyhound bus, where expressing the desires of hope and change is so unwelcome it will get you tossed off at the next rest stop with no refund and no way to get to Topeka. It was at the local VFW hall in Ellsbury, Missouri. The tables had been pushed aside, and some hoops had been set up on the walls next to framed photos of Korean War helicopter evacs and the only two pictures of the Vietnam War that aren't just totally nasty. There was no Jumbotron, no kiss cam. I'm not even sure I saw a referee. I told my father that this seemed like a fun off-season exhibition game. "No," he said. "This is the playoffs." This surprised and gagged me. Footnote: gagged is a term I invented then and there, later pilfered from me without credit by the gay community. How could that be? This was a professional basketball league. And we could afford courtside seats? I was instantly smitten. Finally, a basketball league for regular people. Proletariat hoops. Dunks for the hoi polloi. This was landmark. It was groundbreaking. It was everything I had ever wanted. My family could never go see games from the big leagues. Shaq and LeBron were strangers to me, but the LBL? That was on our level. I asked my dad if we could get season tickets, and he wasn't sure they sell those. He added, "If there's to be supply, first there has to be demand." This taught me a lot about managing my expectations, a valuable lesson for any child that wants to do things. There was a filthy and disheveled mascot running around as well. It went up to every individual person in attendance and asked them if they had any McDoubles, and was later revealed to be a bunch of rats working in perfect harmony. His name was Baskey, and he was Legion. Exquisite. After the game concluded, I asked the winning team for autographs. They seemed legitimately surprised, as if no one had ever asked them for that before. They held the pens like they didn't even know what they were, and scribbled on my program as if they were unfamiliar with the English language. I loved that. They told me next week's league championship would take place on the side of the road in an incredibly large cardboard box. That was ingenuity. That was making the most of your situation. That was real hoops. It was so pure, so authentic. The world of a child is so hermetically sealed. It's full of lies like Santa Claus or that you can do anything with your life. No, you cannot. But you can do some things. And I knew what I wanted to do. No, what I needed to do. I needed to write this book. Big Dunks, the real and true and factual story of the legitimate basketball league, is a labor of love that consumed many years of my life. Over the course of these pages, I will track the league's formation in 1972, all the way to its peak in 1979. What happened from 1980 on is a downslide from the arena to the VFW hall. Across the 2020s, I have conducted a series of in-depth and intimate interviews with the surviving players and personnel responsible for the LBL and its decade of success and its 3 further decades of continued existence. How did what was once the most dominant league in professional basketball go on to play in bingo halls and church basements? Only purchasing this book for full price at your local retailer will let you in on the insights and stories, the heroic rise and fall of the legitimate basketball league. And if you think I'm joking about the full price from your local retailer bit, I am not. I've cut all the best parts out of the ebook version. The audiobook is ad-libbed, and if you pirate Big Dunks, you get the whole experience, but using the technology of the government, I have encoded the words so you will feel a nagging sense that something is slightly off for the rest of your mortal life. And in the afterlife, God will deny you from the pearly gates until you fork over the $21.99. If you check this precious book out from your local library, I will simply kill you. This is a tale that must be beheld to be believed, and it is best believed at the approximate price of a pretty good restaurant pork chop. So soldier on, dear reader, and tuck into this four-course meal of a tome. The story of the legitimate basketball league is nigh Shakespearean in its potent drama. It feels almost written, given the sheer perfection of its storytelling. But I offer you this promise. This all did happen, exactly as it is written, and by the best accounting of the many interview subjects. It is a journey unlike any other, and I commend you for purchasing this book and taking the first step toward literary nirvana. But be forewarned, you will only like what you read here if you like reading books that are good. Chapter 1. The Hoyt-Schermerhorn Shirts and the Broadway Junction Skins.
We were making something out of nothing. Same way that God did when he made the stars and buffaloes. Same way a crock pot turns out a white bean turkey chili. And like all good white bean turkey chilies, it takes time. Jim Westlake.
The whole affair of the legitimate basketball league began, as most endeavors do, with a particularly bored rich person.
Jim Westlake, LBL founder. I see business opportunities everywhere. That's my secret. I can't go anywhere without seeing potential businesses.
Jim Westlake was the founder of the legitimate basketball league, and all major decisions would be run through or dictated by him for the league's entire lifespan. Westlake was at one time described as a looker, though anyone with blue enough eyes can trick their way into being considered attractive. Even more notable was the shocking amount of hair that adorned his head in his youth. It was a legendary thicket, known to accumulate half-spent cigarettes Westlake stuck up there for later.
Footnote, and a few Lucy's I can sell to teenagers.
Time came for that head of hair, as time comes for all men. But there was much to lose, so it hangs on still today like a dense gray fog. For today's interview, it's done up in an elaborate comb-over. It's befuddling. To stare at it is to go mad.
I always wanted to be a businessman, ever since I was a kid. Didn't really matter what business, just that I had one. I started a lemonade stand in my cul-de-sac when I was 6 years old. Had a stranglehold on the territory. Bought out all the other stands that knew what was good for them. Sent my older brothers to take care of any snot-nosed brats that didn't. You wanted lemonade in Fox Pines Estates? You had to come through me.
Dansley Tuppence, former kid reporter, current big girl reporter. It was the talk of the town. We ran a story on him on the front page. Entrepreneurial youth, cuts prices, competition.
What could I say? We were a hit. People wanted a slice. So, for a nominal fee, you could buy into Sour Squeezies, and we had franchise locations all over the suburbs.
Throughout the summer of 1960, Sour Squeezies spread and raked in record profits. It is, in fact, the only lemonade stand whose profits have gone on record at all. By August, the entire enterprise had to be shut down, as it technically violated national monopoly laws. Footnote. Details here are less confirmed, but it is also suspected that Jim Westlake was the enterprising youth who incorporated a lawn mowing business 2 summers later. It is also rumored that he took a small business loan out against a racket of shoveling off old folks' driveways. Of course, he was also the one who shoveled snow onto those driveways. Says Jim,
I won't confirm that, but any businessman worth his salt always knows where to get snow if he needs it.
Wiki Westlake, Jim's mother. I was very proud of Jimmy for his little lemonade stand. But it was time to wrap it up, because Jimmy was about to start the 2nd grade.
Nobody wants lemonade in the winter. There was a flaw in my business plan, but I didn't have the acumen for that stuff yet. I was still watching Grover, and that guy didn't know dick about sales.
Footnote. Sesame Street mainstays ranked in the approximate order of their business acumen. Bert, Mr. Hooper, Oscar, Telly, Maria, Elmo, Zoe, Big Bird, Abby Cadabby, Grover, Cookie Monster, Ernie. When asked to detail his business inspirations,
I was always really inspired by those cartoons where the guy's eyes would roll over and there'd be dollar signs. I said, now that's living. Most people, they walk around blind with their, how do you say it?
Regular eyes?
Yeah, regular eyes. Ordinary fucking peepers. That's chump living, let me tell you. What do you see with ordinary peepers? A duck? The sun? I've never made money off a duck or the sun. I don't think anyone has.
Oh, Jim was my little businessman. He was always starting some little company or other. Soccer lessons for the neighborhood kids.
Driving drunk high schoolers home.
Classroom flower deliveries on Valentine's Day.
Laundering college textbooks. All above board, all done by my peers for a cut of the profits. You want a kid to do something for you? Tell them it's powerful fun, but they can't have any part in it.
Like Tom Sawyer.
Who?
You really don't know Tom Sawyer?
Where'd he graduate from?
I don't think anywhere. He doesn't know school. He only knows little schemes. Mark Twain created him?
He's a book? Never read a book. Never had time. Too busy changing the game so people want to write books about me.
That's fascinating.
Actually, that thing I just said, I didn't believe it first, but I believe it now. And very strongly. Because I said it, now I believe it. Doing something and making someone want to do that something with you are opposite things. If you're reading books, no one wants to read one about you. If you play video games, no one will want to play a little video game about you. If you have sex, you're not doing something that will make someone want to have sex with you. We call it the Jim Westlake paradox.
How did this habit of starting small businesses lead to the founding of an entire basketball league?
Well, I never went to college. I couldn't game it. It felt like I was the one getting gamed, and I hate being gamed. I gotta spend all day in class reading poems. They're gonna give me poems as homework, and they want me to pay them for the privilege? No way! So I moved straight from Shady Springs to big, bright New York City. You know that movie, Wall Street?
Sure.
Never saw it, but I love the poster. Those guys in those nice suits, they had money, and I wanted money.
When asked about how the poster for a 1987 financial drama inspired him to move to New York City in 1972, Jim declined to comment.
Off the record, I actually met those guys on the poster. Not Mickey Douglas or Chuck Sheen, the guys they played.
Jim Westlake is referring, of course, to Bud Fox and Gordon Gekko. When asked how exactly he met two fictional characters, Jim once again declined to comment.
So anyways, I moved to New York, and there's this lady selling churros on the subway platform. I'm trying to tell her there's a lot of money we can make selling churros all over. But she's giving me the cold shoulder unless I buy a churro off her. What do I look like, a sucker? I ain't falling to that. Churros ain't real.
Footnote. Churros are very likely real.
But I get off the subway somewhere in Brooklyn. Obviously an accident. I overslept. And I see these kids playing ball.
Sweet Quincy, street ball legend, former Broadway Junction skin. These games just happen, man. You bring a ball to a public court, and next thing there's 9 other dudes ready to ball. You didn't call them, but there they are.
Nicholas Rosenbaum, street ball statistician. It's a self-perpetuating ecosystem. It occurs spontaneously, then disappears just as quickly. One cell leaves the organism, another appears to replace it. It's actually incredible. A self-perpetuating energy source. I used to say this to my ex-wife. If we could harness the power of street ball, we could eliminate the reliance on fossil fuels overnight.
Footnote. A patent was placed for an engine that utilized street ball as an energy source, but it has proven difficult from a practicality standpoint. The harnessed energy is powerful, but it requires a minimum of a 3-on-3 basketball game to facilitate. It would cut emissions on an automobile by a massive fraction. It would nearly eradicate fuel costs, but would also necessitate designing motor vehicle chassis enough to accommodate a half-court basketball game. As such, it is much better suited for massive transit rail than individual cars, but you try getting even mild criticism of cars across to the American public.
Just a regular game. Shirts versus skins. 5 dudes just showed up without shirts on. 5 dudes showed up with shirts off. That's how it goes. We starting hooping and that guy shows up.
It is a well-speculated backstage detail that despite working with him for many years, Sweet Quincy never learned Jim Westlake's name. In every available video or written interview, Quincy refers to him as that guy. So I inquired.
Who?
The guy whose signature was on all of your checks.
I didn't read those. Nobody told me it was homework.
Fair enough.
These kids, most spectacular thing I'd ever seen. Tossing those balls and those hoops, it was like great sex. Calling plays on the fly, it was like great sex. Sweaty bodies moving in perfect rhythmic time.
It was like
a business opportunity.
That guy just rolled up and signed us right there on the spot. Pulled out these contracts, 10 of them. No idea where he pulled them from.
I keep a few blankies on me in case I see a good sign-in. Most folks don't read what they're signing, don't notice how many fill-in-the-blanks ain't filled in, looking like a fresh Mad Libs. And people just sign away their lives before I've filled in all the boogers and farts.
Footnote. People on Jim Westlake's spontaneous contract retainer include a hot birthday clown, an attractive scuba instructor, a rival hot birthday clown, someone with really good Christmas lights outside their house, and a young woman who absolutely nailed a musical theater song at karaoke.
You never know when a producer's in the crowd. Best to always give this a try. The more obscure and down-tempo, the better.
We signed them because no one had ever offered us contracts before. That was my understanding of what you did when someone handed you a contract. You signed it. Avery Passion Rembrandt, former Hoyt Schermerhorn's shirt. Dude had 10 pens on him.
And it is with that spontaneous duping of a handful of teenagers that the Hoyt Schermerhorn shirts and the Broadway Junction skins were formed. Westlake pulled the location names from 2 different New York City subway stations that are nowhere near each other.
Well, I couldn't pick 2 that were close to each other, now could I? You're just cutting one territory in half the ticket sales. But a rivalry is powerful. Rivalry sells. Bulls, Celtics. Brett and Owen Hart. Mozart, Salieri. They won Best Movie off the strength of that rivalry.
He's talking about Amadeus, Best Picture, 1985. A powerful movie and also very entertaining. We used to watch it on the team bus all the time. We loved watching Mozart do his thing. Always got the guys excited for a game.
These 2 teams would be united in conflict in the founding squads of the legitimate basketball league. When asked to comment on the name,
I wanted it to sound legit.
And there you have it. The inaugural game date was set for August 24th, 1972. The game would be held on what New Yorkers affectionately refer to as that one basketball court across from the IFC Center. Footnote, of course, at the time, the IFC Center was not yet installed. That would not happen for several decades. In 1972, the space was occupied by something called the theater that preceded the IFC Center, and the basketball court was thus that one basketball court across from the theater that preceded the IFC Center, which was confusing until one day it wasn't. This is commonly considered the soul mother of New York's hundreds of basketball courts, and if it were ever demolished, it stands to reason the rest of the courts would suddenly disappear.
There's just nothing like being adjacent to a mid-level New York art cinema to put the spirit of competition in you.
Jim, what was the prep like to get you to that first game?
It's pretty easy to come up with team uniforms when half your squad doesn't need shirts.
Being on the skins was fine, except mosquitoes just love me. Mom used to say I had that sweet blood, and I'm inclined to agree.
Is that where the nickname Sweet came from?
Sweet is my Christian name. It's on my passport. She couldn't have known my ultimate bug-bitten fate when she named me. Weren't any mosquitoes in there. In the womb.
Jim Westlake will be the first person to tell you that the quality of your product is much less important than the quality of your advertising. In fact, Jim Westlake was the first person to tell me that, and as game day drew closer, the media blitz began.
The big networks iced us out. They weren't interested unless somebody died or Monica Lewinsky was there.
Monica Lewinsky would not be born until almost exactly 1 year after our first game, which is a shame, because she really could have helped get some eyes on us.
Babies are tomorrow's big spenders. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and you can check.
I checked. He did, and he will. With no larger structural support like you'd find at the other basketball company, the media blitz had to be on a humbler scale.
It was all groundswell, grassroots. You might call that viral marketing today. Stuff on the personal level. I had some of the fellows do a pickup game in a bar.
The bouncer fouled me.
Passion did a ribbon cutting at a used car dealership.
Turns out that was a load-bearing ribbon. Dealership collapsed. Many injured. 2 dead. Tragic.
I even had them play some one-on-one in a miniature court I had built in the back of a pickup truck. They drove around the city playing ball.
Believe it or not, the cops did not like that one bit. But I played good D on those pigs. Blocked everything they threw up, and they threw up bullets. I made some great offensive plays against the police. They had no choice but to go home.
Footnote. The NYPD left the season winless, the losingest team in basketball history.
Even the Washington Generals beat the Harlem Globetrotters occasionally.
I even called in some favors from an old buddy of mine who was running a major company.
Soon came the day of the Tab Cola Presents Basketball, game between the shirts and skins that would launch the legitimate basketball league. The starting lineups were as follows. The shirts brought Passion Rembrandt, Governor Marshall, Crisco Manzukis, Whirling Dervish, and Billy Doo-Wop. The skins started Sweet Quincy, Jimmy Cremsworth, Beyond Meat, Claudius Dixon, and Mesquite Beverage. Those scholars would go on to call it a well-fought bout between 2 hungry young teams. Attendance was sparse. Though it can't be said for certain, the paltry gate numbers have been attributed by LBL insiders to one cause.
The goddamn motherfucking Godfather.
We couldn't have known that opening against The Godfather was gonna hit us so hard, but it did. The Godfather is a wonderful film, obviously, one of the best, but my colleagues never give it the time of day because of this little grudge. It's very sad. They'll never truly appreciate the beautiful story of the Corleone family. But you can't say I didn't try. I used to hold Godfather watch parties on the road, but I was the only one who ever attended. Oh well, more James Caan for me.
I hate those with every fiber of my being. They almost sunk us.
There was something a bit demoralizing about putting on the game of our lives to crickets while people were wrapped around the block for The Godfather, but who can blame them? It really is a great movie. We tried getting folks' attention, but they weren't interested. That guy even offered to hold their places in line. Nobody cared.
If I ever meet Pacino, I'm going to kill.
Jim, you may not want to put a threat like this in the book.
I hope he reads it. I want him to know. Alfredo Pacino, I got a righteous kill with you in mind. I've never seen The Devil's Advocate, but I've been one. You're cruising for a bruising buddy. The heat is on. Jack and Jill.
Chapter 2, Shirts and Skins, Part 2, The Lady Liberty Game.
Comebacks are a very powerful thing. Almost more powerful than coming the first time. Jesus wasn't a big deal until the comeback. When the band goes away, you know the encore's going to happen no matter what, but that's how much we love comebacks. And to come back, you have to go away. I would recommend people go away more often. Holly Huckster.
After the disastrous launch of the legitimate basketball league, Jim Westlake suddenly disappeared.
Teddy Crunch, former roommate of Jim. I didn't see Jim for 2 entire years. I was worried, but the rent kept coming, so I assumed he was fine. The first would roll around, and suddenly there'd be a wad of wet bills on my dresser. Or a guy in a trench coat would bump into me on the subway platform, and there'd be a rent check inside my coat pocket. One time a pigeon brought it.
I didn't train any fucking pigeon. No idea what happened there.
The same mysterious check delivery system went for the contracted players.
Governor Marshall, retired shirt. Our contracts actually had a non-compete clause in them, so I couldn't play basketball while Jim was away, which is a waking nightmare to me. It was a dream to get to play ball for even one game. That was taken from me. I was barred from every court. I wasn't even allowed to do those rigged shooting contests at state fairs. All I wanted was a little goldfish, and I had to buy one like a chump. I talk about this harrowing experience in my memoir, Illegal to Hoop.
Listen, I was lost. Out of it. Off the reservation.
Interviewee quotes are exactly as dictated. The writer and publishers of this book do not condone the use of potentially offensive language.
Don't whisper that in your little fucking tape recorder. I went on a 2-year bender and you're worried about being PC? And I got up to some shit, man. Nobody does a bender like Jim Westlake. And this is a book, so I can tell you whatever, and Jaw Q Law can't do nothing.
To the best knowledge of the crack legal team at insert publisher name here, this is not true. You are on the hook for crimes you admit to in a book. All books are evidence.
I'd wake up in Seattle and fall asleep in Bangkok. I wound up in a hospital in Mexico City for entering a chicken fight as a ringer. I wound up in jail because I did it a second time. I tried to bang out my feelings in Iceland, and I did a lot of banging. Half the country is now descended from me, and I was still sad. Figure that. The low point was probably when I tried to kill Al Pacino. He did fucking what now? Al and I patched that up decades ago. Gave him courtside seats for every game. I have never met that man in my life. But that rage inside me just wouldn't go away. I tried everything. Hitting stuff, drinking stuff, fucking stuff, and none of it made me feel any better. Figure that. But then, inspiration struck.
Roderick Weeks, basketball historian, which is a real job. What you gotta understand is, nobody benders like Jim Westlake. Legend tells it like this. After a 2-year bender that circumnavigated the globe so many times it would have made Ferdinand Magellan's little skeleton jaw drop, Jim returned where it all began. That one basketball court across from the IFC Center. He went back there, an empty and vacuous soul. He touched the chain link. Onlookers described the scene as wistful. He was ready to pack it all in and pay out the Shirts and Skins the rest of their contract. But then he looked across the street and saw the IFC Center marquee.
The Godfather Part fucking 2.
A wonderful film. Parallel stories of a father building an empire and a son destroying it. Truly masterful. Many prefer it to the first. Personally, I'm torn.
But Jim Westlake couldn't appreciate the artistry.
I was gonna burn that fucker to the ground. I went out, bought a gas can, bought an exterminator jumpsuit, said I was spraying the place, and the ticket taker believed me. You can get away with anything, man. People don't know nothing about nothing. Anyways, I had poured that gas about halfway down the aisle when the light bulb went off over my head.
The light bulb was literal, and the chain reaction of its exploding was catastrophic. The small explosion that rocked the theater that preceded the IFC Center was labeled non-criminal, and has since been attributed to really bad wiring in that place. My God.
I looked up at the movie, and there's this little kid on a boat. He sees Lady Liberty, and it inspires something in him.
A tremendous scene.
Don't know where his parents were. Seemed weird that he was all alone. Aren't Italians supposed to be good at families? You can print that. It's a positive stereotype.
Okay.
But what hit me was, even this lonely little meatball kid, Lady Liberty touched him. Everybody loves that big lady. She's got a book, she's got a torch. What's not to like? And we needed to bring basketball to that.
I think when he said that, my answer was, what?
What indeed? A meeting was called for the whole of the legitimate basketball league, and no one was quite sure what Jim was referring to. Even Jim didn't seem entirely sure.
I knew I needed her. I just wasn't sure how. I talked to an architect buddy of mine. He didn't understand me at all, so I told him to kick rocks. Then I spoke to a designer of very large clothing. No dice. Kick rocks. The giant magnet guy? Rocks. Puppeteer? Rocks. Wizard of the College of Transmutation? Rocks.
Any ideas of how Lady Liberty might have been useful to the LBL had all been shot down.
But if she couldn't play with us, she'd have to play against us.
That idea scared me. Playing against Lady Liberty. You ever try to hoop around a 305-foot lady? With incredible zone play and record-setting rebounds. Can't be done. Best player I ever seen.
Jim Westlake also allegedly floated the idea to have a player dunk over the Statue of Liberty. When asked how exactly this would be accomplished, Jim Westlake was said to have screamed,
"Ropes and stuff!"
and shattered his hand punching an automat vending machine. He recalls nothing of the incident or line of thought.
There's gotta be some holes in my memory. That's something you're just gonna have to deal with. A lot has gone in here and gone out of here. Woo!
The decision was eventually made to attempt to game on top of the Statue of Liberty's crowned head. Needless to say, the idea was controversial amongst the people who actually had to perform it. Jim asked those protesting to take a look at their contracts, and no one could push back against that. They had, indeed, signed contracts. Whether those contracts covered for this level of workplace hazard was not something anyone bothered to look up. For reasons of cost-cutting, there would be no net erected around the edges of the crown, with naught but a single fireman's tarp thing to catch anyone unlucky enough to tumble over the sides. Jim advised all players to get right with their gods.
Governor Marshall, head of player relations and former skid. Everybody prayed a lot before that day, but nobody prayed like Jimmy Crimsworth. Day and night, that guy.
I think I saw him self-filleting.
It is the best intuition of this author that Jim meant to say self-flagellating, the niche practice of whipping oneself in penance to God.
No, I'm pretty sure it's filleting.
Okay, Jim. So with prayers up and contracts down, the day of the legitimate basketball league's second debut game arrived. Players arrived at Liberty Island wearing trench coats and big hats so no one might see their gear underneath. Basketball players are explicitly banned at this port of entry to America and are turned away at Ellis Island to this day.
It is my understanding this practice of denying basketball players entry to America began in the late 20th century. It is presupposed it was a basketball player who was the first man to try and marry the Statue of Liberty.
What you gotta understand is, everyone wants to marry the Statue of Liberty. She's tall, she's trim, she has a good job, and gets a nice tan from all that sun exposure. She's the perfect woman, but none of us are good enough for her. Whether those legends are true is immaterial. It still stands that hoopers are barred from Liberty Island. Any counterexamples where basketball players have been seen visiting the Statue of Liberty or gaining American citizenship are examples of crimes. The modern practice of finding the largest Eastern European man you can and having him play center for the Denver Nuggets must be done in abject secrecy, under cover of night, and with much bribing.
We actually ended up being down a player because Crisco Manzukis went to Ellis Island by mistake. They changed his last name to Mancy and he became a plumber.
There was a brief panic that the game was suddenly down to 9 players until another player suddenly appeared. This is in keeping with the ecosystemic laws of street ball, that a player can neither be created nor destroyed. One will always be there to take their place.
Dashin', Jimmy Bashin'. I was there with my family. We were having a nice holiday, but I could not deny the call of the ball. So, I left my family for the hoops, and I never looked back.
The squad refilled, the game was on. Both teams and referee Jeffrey made their way to the summit of Lady Liberty, where 2 hoops and 2 cameras were waiting for them. The game was broadcast live on NBC, though NBC had no idea this was going to happen.
I know a guy who owns a lot of cables, and a man with many cables can do anything. So my cables friend hooked us up, and we went on after McMillan and Wife.
Though NBC was shocked at the sudden invasion of their airwaves, they were pleasantly surprised how well the legitimate basketball league held McMillan and Wife's viewership in the key demographics. They briefly considered stopping the pirate broadcast that hijacked their network, but they ultimately left it going. An excerpt from the internal memo following the incident says, "There were simply too many cables. There was nothing we could do." All proceeded well through the first half. Viewership numbers flared, tourists hopped on sightseeing boats trying to catch a glimpse of the action, but to no avail.
Lady Liberty was just too damn tall.
No one could see the Beatles rooftop concert from the street neither, but it didn't matter. It's the mystique. That it happened at all is the attraction.
Circumstances for the legitimate basketball league were looking up for the first time ever. That was until 2 minutes and 13 seconds into the third quarter. Claudius Dixon executed a bounce pass in the direction of Jimmy Cremsworth, but it took a bad bounce off of a freedom bolt in the dome of the monument. The top of the Statue of Liberty is not a regulation basketball court after all. The pass went wide and Jimmy, ever the dedicated baller, chased after it. He did a tremendous, swooping save that on any basketball court not located atop a 305-foot statue would have sent him sailing triumphantly into the crowd. Instead, he careened over the edge and disappeared from sight.
That was a dark moment.
Referee Jeffrey, longtime LBL official. I didn't know what to call. Is a man plummeting to his death a foul? They don't teach you this stuff in referee school.
I saw the whole enterprise, this entire league, vanish before my eyes. It was over. Francis Ford Coppola won. Until...
It is impossible to corroborate the following story, as the cameras were unmanned and fixed on the action, yet all eyewitnesses swear it to be true. Jimmy Cremsworth's plummeting form simply disappeared, mid-fall, never touching the ground. All that remained was his uniform, which was scattered to the wind. Some accounts claim there was also a brilliant, blinding flash of light.
I heard harps. I know I did. I know from harps, and there were harps.
Can you testify to godly intervention?
God is the ultimate referee, and who am I to question his call on the play?
I was really distraught, sick to my stomach. For the second time today, we were down a man. How could this keep happening to me?
But this was not the end. Further eyewitness accounts claim, and I am embellishing not one iota, that a new player, in uniform, manifested from thin air ready to ball. His laces were tied, he had the carefree walk of a Christian who really believes in God, and he came pre-signed with a Captain Crunch brand deal.
Mark Rubens, divinely appeared basketball player. 1 minute, I did not exist. The next minute, I was playing shooting guard for the Skins. Life seems really crazy sometimes, especially when you are 6 seconds old. You don't know what to do with yourself. You just know you love the satisfying flavor of Captain Crunch.
Our Father, who art in heaven, conjured up in Mark Rubens a confusing athlete. One of those guys who looks like a tubby everyman but can move like they're half their size. He was born bald on top with hair along the sides, which feels cruel of our Lord. His feet were of a size where shoes had to be custom ordered, and his hands were the same if hands had shoes. Footnote: gloves are not hand shoes, and you know that. Don't get smart with me. All players agreed that any 10 men could play a game, so things proceeded on as scheduled. The shirts, weighed down by the wind resistance of their trademark garments, were defeated, 24-0. The record was now tied at 1-1. and both a company and a rivalry were born.
The league was a big hit. Ratings were good, people were talking, folks in the flyover states liked that we confirmed the existence of the Christian God. We went through a fortune in balls falling 300 feet into the harbor, but we'd make all that back in merch sales for God's Basketball League. And what's more legit than that?
This was an audiobook sample of Big Dunks, the real and true and factual story of the legitimate basketball league. This book, and by extension the rest of this audiobook, is currently seeking sale. If you are a book publisher or a book agent, reach out to TV's Kevin Lanigan at gmail.com for more information, or at TV's Kevin Lanigan on social media. If you are not a book publisher or a book agent, send this to someone who is. This audiobook sample featured the vocal talents of TV's Kevin Lanigan, Graham Techler, Michael Smallwood, Jacob Kelleher, and Caroline Amos. You should hire them in addition to buying this book.